Helpful for life.
If you asked me to describe my perfect date, I would say probably April 25th. It's not too hot, it's not too cold, and all you need is a light jacket. Okay, yes, that was a Miss Congeniality quote. I'm a pretty cultured guy. Anyways, as you're shopping in the grocery store or grabbing something out of your fridge or out of the pantry, you may see that there are dates on most, if not every product, including bottled water. Now, there's different wording on a lot of these, and it can be a little confusing. So as we started researching into this, we started wondering, well, what's the difference between the USDA and the FDA when it comes to food? Well, what we found out is that the USDA, which is the United States Department of Agriculture, has an agency that's responsible for meat, poultry, and eggs, and ensuring that those are wholesome, safe, as well as being labeled and packaged correctly. This agency is called the Food Safety and Inspection Service, or FSIS. I like to think of it as ISIS, but they give an F about our food. Ting. The Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, on the other hand, is responsible for most other foods, including all processed foods. However, it's not always clear-cut. It can be kind of crazy sometimes. For example, let's look at sausage. Well, the USDA is responsible for the meat inside the sausage, but the FDA is responsible for the casing. And when it comes to sandwiches, if it's an open-face sandwiches, that's in the USDA's court. But if it's a closed-face, it's the FDA. Confusing, huh? There are many different phrases that you may see on the packaging of your food. And we'll get into some of the specifics of that in a second. But the good news is, in recent years, the USDA, the FDA, many activists and third-party groups, as well as some food companies, have gotten behind the use of a single phrase, best if used by. There have been studies that showed that that phrasing most accurately helped the consumer understand what the date meant. The downside is this isn't regulated or in any type of law, so it's really up to the manufacturer what they put. They can put whatever they want. So let's just hope that the companies are good guys and they end up putting best if used by over the next few years. All that being said, here are some common explanations for the different wording you may see on your food packaging. Now keep in mind that these dates have to do with quality, not necessarily safety of the food. Also keep in mind that these dates have to do with unopened food. So as soon as you open that food, you're starting a whole separate timer, which may be shorter than the date that's printed on the packaging. Best if used by. This means that the product will retain its maximum freshness, flavor, and texture if you use it by this date. You may also see freeze by or used by. Now, after this date, the quality of the product is going to decrease a lot faster. And of course, if you wait long enough, it's going to become unsafe to eat. Sell by, pull by, or guaranteed fresh by. This date is really more targeted towards the grocery store. It's the day where the manufacturer wants them to take it off the shelf and no longer sell it. However, if you buy something with this, know that after that date hits, the product still has probably about a third of its life left. Pack date. This is something you'll see in the deli, the bakery, or anywhere where the grocery store prepares something in-house. And you probably see it at some other places too. The pack date simply just says what day the food was put into the package and the label was put on it. Closed or coded date. Now this term basically just means that on the packaging there's a little code that may be a series of numbers and or letters that indicate the day that the food was packed into the packaging. Now, if you're really interested in what it is, you can go online and probably find a decoder for it. But the main purpose for these dates are for manufacturers, especially when it comes to things like recalls. A different term you may hear is open date. And an open date is just the date that the manufacturer puts on the product to help the consumer know when to eat the product by. And that's basically all of the other ones we talked about besides coded dates. It's worth noting that there's one product where the date is actually regulated, and that's baby formula. Baby formula must maintain a certain level of nutrition and be able to pass through a standard bottle nipple by that use date. It's generally advised to not use expired baby formula. One last question to answer is, will I get sick if I eat food after the expiration date? Well, if it's a shelf-stable product, which is a packaged good that does not have to be refrigerated, like canned goods, then the answer is no, probably not. The main thing that degrades is quality, not safety. That's why you see people in zombie apocalypse films always eating that can of pork and beans. Now, of course, if the can's been damaged or pierced, you could have a different situation, but if it's not, then you're probably okay. Now, when it comes to refrigerated items, you should be good if you're pretty close to the date, but the further you go past that date, the riskier it is. So that's it for our date education, but just remember, use your senses. The dates are just a guideline. Oh, before we go, one last fun date fact. When you're shopping for eggs, look for this 3-digit number next to the Best By date. That will tell you what day the eggs were packed on. In this case, it's 161. So that means these eggs were packed on the 161st day of the year. That will give you a more accurate idea of the freshness, whereas the Best By date, the packers actually have a bit of wiggle room with what they put on there. Hope you enjoy.